So imagine you walk into this big pitch. You are wearing like the absolute perfect suit. You've memorized the slide deck. Your tone is completely modulated, and you're making the exact recommended amount of eye contact.
Right, you're hitting every single bullet point on your agenda.
Exactly. And yet, like 3 minutes into the meeting, you can feel the room just slipping away. You look at the people across the table, and their eyes are glazing over.
Yeah, it's the worst feeling.
It really is. Because you did everything correctly on paper, right? It was flawless. So why did they just tune you out?
It's maddening. I mean, it completely defies the fundamental equation we're all taught about communication.
Yeah.
We're basically told that if we curate our vocabulary and, manage our external posture, we'll guarantee a specific reaction. And when that fails, it feels like the universe is just acting completely randomly.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. If you're someone who has ever felt that agonizing disconnect between how hard you're trying to present yourself and how the world is actually responding to you, this is the analysis you've been waiting for.
We are looking at a quietly radical essay today that, honestly, it dismantles everything we think we know about social dynamics.
Yeah, and personal presence, too. The core premise we're exploring today is this: however you really see yourself is how you will really be seen.
Which, I mean, that forces us to immediately discard the standard diet of self-improvement advice. We're moving entirely past the sort of positive thinking paradigms.
Right, and those classic fake it till you make it strategies.
Exactly. Those are out the window.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Oh.
Because the author starts by making a really crucial distinction between the theater of presentation and the actual, biological reality of human connection.
The theater of presentation. I love that phrase.
Right, because we live in a culture that is almost exclusively obsessed with the theater. I mean, we have entire industries, from fashion to executive coaching, completely dedicated to engineering your presence from the outside in.
And to be fair, the essay acknowledges that the theater isn't entirely meaningless. Context obviously matters.
Sure, yeah.
A sharp suit and a firm handshake, they do provide a temporary social signal. But the text refers to this as just a surface-level intervention. It's really just a cognitive shortcut we offer the people around us.
Reading the source, the image that kept flashing in my mind was someone putting a fresh coat of, premium expensive paint over a rotting wooden beam.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You can engineer this pristine exterior. You can use all the right industry jargon. You can stand in a power pose in the bathroom before the meeting.
Right, the superhero pose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But a structural beam only matters when weight is actually applied to it.
Yeah.
When you face real resistance, like a tough question from a client or a skeptical audience, some high-stakes moment, people aren't leaning on the paint, they're leaning on the wood.
Yeah.
And if the inner self-belief is rotting, that paint job is going to crack instantly.
What's fascinating here is the precise biological and psychological mechanism behind why that paint cracks. The author actually identifies this mechanism as attunement.
Attunement, okay.
Yeah, because while you are consciously managing your posture and your words, the people around you are exquisitely sensitive instruments. We read each other constantly.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of that data processing happens entirely below the threshold of conscious awareness.
Wait, let's dig into that because it sounds a little, I don't know, mystical on the surface. How exactly are we reading each other if we aren't consciously thinking about it?
Well, it is purely physiological. Think about the concept of mirror neurons and our autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
When you speak to someone, their nervous system is actively scanning yours for threats or inconsistencies. The signal gets through beneath your language.
So it's not what you're saying at all.
Right. It lives in the micro-hesitations before you answer a question. It's transmitted in the specific tension of your jaw or the erratic rhythm of your breathing, or just the way your physical presence subtly contracts when you're challenged.
So the body is essentially acting as a hidden broadcast tower, regardless of what the mouth is actually saying.
Precisely. And the source material provides this brilliant, honestly somewhat heartbreaking example. It points out that a person who secretly believes they are a burden will inevitably be treated as a burden.
Even if they're nice.
Even if they are smiling, accommodating, and just unfailingly polite.
Because the smile is the theater, but the I am a burden belief is the broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the person across from them picks up on the constant, low-level apologies in their posture. They register that subtle, anxious neediness in the interaction.
Wow.
And so the receiver's nervous system processes that data and just adjusts its behavior to match the deeper signal. They start treating the person as a burden because the person's own body language has instructed them to do so.
That is wild.
Conversely, someone who carries an unshakable inner knowing of their own value is afforded respect often before they even open their mouths.
Which brings us to the linchpin of this entire theory. The phrase is however you really see yourself. That word really is doing some heavy lifting here.
Oh, definitely.
If the theater doesn't work, what actually constitutes our reality? So what does this all mean for the tools so many of us use every day?
Right.
Like what about journaling? Or morning affirmations? If I stand in the mirror and repeat, I am a capable leader 50 times every morning, isn't that my real self-image?
The author draws a hard line here. The real self-image is not the one you recite in favorable lighting.
Ouch. Okay.
It's not the aspirational identity you write in your journal when you're alone in your kitchen with a cup of coffee. The real self-image is exclusively defined by the answer your nervous system gives in moments of actual, terrifying exposure and risk.
Crucible moments.
The moments of risk are the only reliable audit of your structural integrity.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, when you step onto a stage or, initiate a conversation regarding a raise or walk into a room of intimidating peers, your nervous system just bypasses your conscious mind entirely and asks these fundamental survival questions.
What boy.
Like, do I actually belong here? Am I worth this space? Do I deserve to be seen?
And if my journal says I am a powerful leader, but my nervous system, under the pressure of that boardroom, screams, I am a fraud, and they are about to figure it out, the room only hears the fraud. The affirmation just evaporates.
It completely evaporates because the autonomic response always overrides the cognitive rehearsal. Understanding this helps us make sense of what the text calls the tragedy of external validation.
The tragedy of external validation. That sounds intense.
It is. We operate under this delusion that if we just get the promotion or win the award or hear the praise, it'll finally fix that internal rot in the wooden beam.
But I'm sure everyone listening has experienced getting a compliment and immediately deflecting it. Like someone says, great presentation, and we instantly say, oh, the team actually did all the heavy lifting, or I barely threw it together.
Yeah, that deflection is the tragedy in action. When external praise arrives, if the deep internal verdict remains one of unworthiness, the praise simply slides right off the surface.
It just doesn't stick.
Right. It's a phenomenon rooted in cognitive dissonance. The internal operating system rejects the external data because it contradicts the baseline programming. The internal voice basically says, they must not be seeing clearly. If they really knew me, they wouldn't praise me.
And the consequence of that, which the source stresses pretty heavily, is that the world eventually takes its cue from your rejection.
Yes.
If you continually swat away compliments or shrink when handed authority, the world stops offering them. The recognition fades. The mirror of the world reflects back the exact signal you transmitted.
And then you find yourself trapped. Because external praise cannot overwrite a deep internal verdict, we get caught in these continuous feedback loops. You are actively, continuously teaching every room you walk into exactly how to value you.
That is both a terrifying thought and, honestly, incredibly empowering. It shifts the locus of control entirely back to us.
It really does.
The text actually breaks this down into two distinct mechanisms, the degenerative loop and the generative loop. Let's look at how the degenerative loop manifests in a typical work environment.
So the degenerative loop is always driven by an inner image of smallness, or a deeply held belief that your worth is strictly conditional.
Okay.
When an individual operates from this inner image, they fundamentally believe their presence must be constantly earned or apologized for.
Oh, think about the classic email we all send when we're feeling insecure. So sorry to bother you. I know you're busy. Just a quick, probably stupid question.
Yes.
You haven't even stated your need yet, and you've already preemptively contracted. You shrank before anyone even asked you to.
And in doing so, you have basically handed the recipient the blueprint for your own diminishment. You are over-explaining, over-justifying, and over-qualifying.
Yeah.
The author argues that when you behave this way, the room learns your rules and the room complies. The room will treat you as small because you have broadcasted that smallness is your absolute truth. You create the very marginalization you are afraid of.
Wow. Okay, so contrast that with the generative loop. This isn't just about, sending shorter emails, right?
Yep.
The underlying mechanism is completely inverted.
Right. The generative loop is driven by an inner image of wholeness. It operates on a baseline assumption of legitimate presence and deserved belonging.
But what does that look like without the theater? Like, if we aren't talking about power posing, how does someone in a generative loop actually behave under pressure?
They exhibit this really striking lack of defensive movement. They ask for what they want directly without wrapping it in apologies.
They just own it.
Yeah. They claim physical and conversational space naturally without having to forcefully rip it away from others. And crucially, as we discussed with the tragedy of validation, they receive compliments without deflecting them.
Right.
When pressure is applied, like when they are challenged, they simply hold their position. They don't collapse and they don't attack.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Hmm.
And I want to push back on this on behalf of the listener.
Okay, go for it.
We are talking about claiming space and having this unshakable inner image. For anyone who's been socialized to value humility or taught that taking up space is inherently rude, this starts to sound a lot like a recipe for narcissism.
I can see that.
Right? Like if you walk around with absolute certainty of your own worth, ignoring external feedback because your inner image is so robust, aren't you just becoming arrogant? Aren't you inflating yourself at the expense of everyone else in the room?
This raises an important question. And the fear you're describing, the fear that seeing yourself clearly and fully is somehow synonymous with arrogance, is incredibly common. But the author argues that this fear is based on a profound misunderstanding of what arrogance actually is. The text completely flips the definition.
How so? Because arrogance seems pretty straightforward. It's the guy who thinks he's better than everyone else.
But why does he have to project that he is better?
Mm.
The essay posits that arrogance is not a high self-image. Arrogance is a fiercely defended, fragile self-image. It is an inner knowing that is so unstable it requires constant, exhilarating external reinforcement.
I'm not sure I fully buy that yet. The loudest, most domineering person in a meeting doesn't usually look fragile. They look entirely convinced of their own brilliance.
They look convinced, yes, but their behavior betrays their internal reality. Like, why does someone need to dominate a meeting? Why do they need to dismiss a junior colleague's idea? Why do they overreach and constantly remind you of their credentials?
Well, prove it.
Right. Those are frantic movements. Those are the actions of someone whose internal structural beam is rotting, and they are terrified someone is going to notice. They have to push others down to artificially elevate themselves. It's a zero-sum game because their self-worth is entirely contingent on external ranking.
Oh, wow. That completely reframes it. True self-regard wouldn't need to play the ranking game at all.
Exactly. True self-regard is remarkably quiet. It does not need to announce itself at the start of the meeting. It doesn't require the diminishment of anyone else in the room to validate its own existence.
Right.
It is simply a stable, embodied knowing that your presence is legitimate. If your inner image is whole, you can listen to a dissenting opinion without feeling like your identity is under attack.
The text calls this state integrity, which is just such a beautiful use of the word. It's not integrity in the moral sense of like telling the truth. It's structural integrity.
Yes.
The absolute alignment of what you project and what you actually are. It is the absence of the belief that you are lesser, which eliminates the need to prove you are greater.
That is the perfect synthesis. But it leads us to the most daunting aspect of this entire philosophy.
Which is?
Well, if true self-regard is this quiet structural integrity, and we know that external fixes like a new wardrobe, a new job title, or aggressive social strategies don't change the underlying broadcast, how do we actually update our inner image? How do we stop the degenerative loop?
Right, because we've eliminated all the easy answers. The author actually points out that people will go to extreme lengths to avoid this internal work. We try what they call external repositioning.
Yes, the geographic cure.
The classic geographic cure. You think, I'm not respected at this company, so I'll just get a job at a new company. Or I can't find my footing in this city. If I just move to New York, I'll completely reinvent myself.
And the tragic irony of external repositioning is that you pack your nervous system right into your suitcase and bring it with you.
Yeah, it travels well.
It really does. If your deep inner verdict remains one of unworthiness, you will simply step off the plane in New York and begin broadcasting the exact same signal, just wearing a different coat. And within 6 months, the new city and the new coworkers will be treating you exactly like the old ones did.
Because the locus of control was never the city, it was the broadcast. So the actual work is entirely interior. It's the slow, deeply uncomfortable process of examining what you fundamentally believe about your own value. And the source doesn't sugarcoat this at all. It describes this process as involving the grief of releasing old stories.
That word grief is so vital here. We don't just hold on to beliefs of unworthiness because we're masochistic. We hold on to them because at some point in our development, they served as protective armor.
Protective. How does feeling unworthy protect you?
Well, if you maintain a belief that you are small and insignificant, you never take risks. If you never take risks, you never face devastating public failure or rejection.
Wow. So releasing the story of your own inadequacy means taking off the armor. It exposes you to the very risks you've spent your life trying to avoid.
It is deeply vulnerable. The essay suggests that changing the self-image actually requires accumulated physical experiences of what it calls the radical act of allowing yourself to be witnessed without performing.
Let's ground that a bit.
Yeah.
What does being witnessed without performing actually look like for someone going to work tomorrow?
It means walking into the staff meeting and resisting the urge to crack a self-deprecating joke to make everyone comfortable. It means presenting your idea, stopping talking when you are finished, and just letting the silence sit there without rushing to qualify your statements. You drop the theater, you allow your raw presence to exist in the room.
And the terrifying part is waiting to see if you get kicked out of the room for doing it.
Exactly.
But the magic happens when you realize you don't.
Yeah.
You stop tap dancing, you stop preemptively shrinking, and the room didn't collapse. You survived.
And every time you survive that exposure, you update the biological mechanism. You are teaching your nervous system that it is safe to exist with legitimate presence. You slowly rewrite the broadcast from the inside out.
So, synthesizing everything we've explored today, the ultimate destination the author is pointing us toward is a state called coherence.
Coherence. Yeah.
Coherence is when the layers of our identity finally agree with each other. It is the end of the civil war between your conscious desires and your autonomic nervous system. Your self-image and your self-expression become the exact same thing.
And when you achieve coherence, the friction of daily social interaction just plummets. You no longer have to work exhaustingly hard to manage how people are perceiving you because the signal you are transmitting is pure.
Right.
You radiate clarity. That wholeness, holding yourself in the exact same high regard that you offer to the world, is the daily practice.
This has been such a paradigm-shifting journey. We started by looking at the paint job, the theater presentation, and realized it offers zero structural integrity.
None.
We learned that the world doesn't respond to the affirmations we recite in the safety of our kitchens. It responds to the immediate biological verdict our nervous system broadcasts in moments of real risk. We explored the feedback loops, realizing that whether we shrink in our emails or quietly claim space in the boardroom, we're actively teaching the world how to treat us.
Yeah.
And we finally dismantled the myth of arrogance, discovering that true self-regard isn't loud or dominating, it is simply the quiet integrity of coherence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the absolute most vital takeaway is understanding that your transmitter is always on. Your answer to the question of your own worth is already broadcasting to your colleagues, your friends, and your family.
Always.
You cannot turn it off. The only work left for you to do is to look inward, face the discomfort, and ensure that the signal you are sending is the truth you actually mean to send.
Which brings us back to where we started today. The defining question of your social and professional life should never be the superficial one. How do I want to be seen? The real, unavoidable question is, what do I actually believe at depth about who I am? So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a direct challenge.
Ooh, I like this.
Think about a specific room, a specific meeting, or a specific relationship in your life right now where you consistently feel overlooked, diminished, or just fundamentally misunderstood. You have probably spent months trying to fix the paint job. You've been agonizing over finding the perfect words or the right strategy to make them respect you. But before you blame their lack of perception or draft another apologetic email, I want you to ask yourself, what unspoken verdict of unworthiness is your nervous system secretly transmitting before you even open your mouth?